Hello, welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. Today we're going to be finishing up Side Projects Week with my own personal pick from the poll. After we take the first and second highest voted, we then take a random one from the top half, a random one from the bottom half, and then I personally choose one based on whatever criteria I feel like choosing it on. Today we're going to be looking at a band called Gordian Knot. Andrew Perrine says feels like a broken record at this point, but listen to some Gordian Knot, some brighter thing. Although it's some brighter things. I'm looking at the title right here. For side projects, it's the side project of the Cynic bassist Sean Malone. And I picked this because I know of the Gordian Knot, the myth of the unsolvable problem, as well as I have this little guy right here. It is a brain puzzle called the Gordian Knot. It is dismantled. As you can see, I took it apart. It took like 3 weeks and a little bit of a video guide to do so, but I've never put it back together. Yeah, that's a tough little puzzle. Easily the hardest puzzle I have in my, albeit small, collection. But I know of the Gordian Knot. I'm interested how the concept of an unsolvable problem or puzzle is incorporated into the band. You know, how they, if they incorporate it, I suppose. It is a really cool sounding name, so, you know, it just could have that cool factor. We are Gordian Knot, and then they play like pop music. I don't know. Let's get into this. Let's see what these guys are all about. Really interesting percussive sound there. That guitar is way out of time. We got a weird... Yeah, time got real weird after that guitar came in. Really like that guitar tone. Ooh, that bass is sounding nice. What are we, alternating 11/8 and 12/8? This part's gorgeous. that bass tone is fat. It's got like, well, it's not like super fat like we've heard in the past, but it has this nice, like jazzy width to it. I will say I was not keen on that section there. Yeah. Why did that feel like the tone out of 80s hair metal? I like those short staccato hits. Dude, that bass counterpoint to the guitar line? Oh. Very bright and uplifting here. A lot of the song has been, but this part specifically is standing out to me. Yeah. All right. I think that all right. I didn't want to interrupt that ending, even though it was pretty much the same thing going on. That was before it just fading out. Just wanted to make sure that there's nothing else left, and it's kind of rude to talk over an ending, right? So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I didn't want to really talk over that one. I can't believe this. I mean, the channel is Gordian Knot Topic. So that's the official Gordian Knot channel for their songs, not necessarily music videos, and it's all provided by their record label, and it only has 23 subscribers. Like, what is wrong here? 45 thumbs up, 2 thumbs down. I get the 2 thumbs down. I do. It's the song's not for everybody. 2 people out there did not enjoy it. I get it. But 23 subs. Oh man, this is so good. Why is nobody? Only 3,000 views in 4 years, 3 years. All right, so the namesake fits. All right, the Gordian Knot is an unsolvable problem, and I will say that while it's not impossible to understand and analyze what's going on here, it is a Herculean task for sure to really break this down. I don't think it's possible for anybody to understand what is going on at all times on a first time listen. The song is chaotic. There's multiple sections, there's multiple layers, there's just a lot of stuff going on rhythmically, there's a lot of stuff going on musically and harmonically. It's a deep layered song. There's a lot of complexity here. Definitely worthy of the band name Gordian Knot. I don't even know where to start except the bass. Let's start at the bass, right? Okay, so this is the Cynic bassist. This is his side project, Sean something or another. I apologize, I forgot about that. That was 8 minutes of awesomeness ago. My brain wiped out anything prior to that, trying to comprehend what was going on. I'm probably lucky I remember is the bassist from Cynic. Yeah, so that the bass just sounds so good in every section it's in. It has these beautiful runs. The tone has this nice jazz wideness to it, where it's not overbearingly large like we see in a lot of rock and metal, but it still has a bit of that punch to it. I would say it's actually one of the wider sounds in this song. I think the only song that would really take up, I mean, the only sound that takes up more space is the distorted guitar when it's used for texture and atmosphere. We're going to get to that in a second. Um, the bass, though, I think is a perfect contrast to the guitars that all typically there's really 3 parts here that take lead. We have the bassist who plays some there's the bassist who takes some lead lines occasionally, but a lot of the lead lines are done by the guitars. Maybe there's a keyboard. I couldn't really tell. There were a couple of sections where I'm like, yeah, that's a keyboard, but it doesn't appear all the time. And usually, if you have a keyboardist, they're present often. So I don't know if that was just some modulation on a guitar tone to create that sound, or if there's a lot of modulation on a keyboard to make it so that I don't, to make it so it doesn't have a traditional keyboard sound. Just with all the things we can do in the modern day with, digital audio manipulation, as well as analog manipulation with pedals and effects and cabinets and amps and all sorts of stuff, you can never really be sure what an instrument is. So I for sure heard 2 guitars and a bass. That's what I'm going to stick with. But just know that there were 3 or 4 instruments that were taking lead aspects, or should I say, like 3 or 4 tones that were taking lead aspects or lead lines. And we were seeing multiple variations and configurations of these tones. But occasionally, the bass did get a chance to shine with a very beautiful melody line. Some could say it's a bass line. A lot of it was walking around chord or scales, but it was just done so in a beautiful way with really strong sense of melody. So I kind of don't want to call them bass lines, even though, in another context, they could definitely be that. Um, but the bass provides a strong contrast to some of the harsher attacks by the guitars. And that's not to say that the guitars didn't have a sort of legato voice to them. They definitely pulled it out at times, but due to the width of the bass tone and probably the finger picking, it just had this very smooth transition between notes. There was just a very smooth attack on them. and it was definitely the smoothest sounding instrument, and I loved when it came in, especially when it did some counterpoint and layering against the other guitars. There's just this really nice contrast between them, between the two sounds, and it just is beautiful. It happened like two times tops, maybe one time for sure, where there's a guitar and a bass doing a bit of a duet, you could say, and it was just, I don't do that often. I don't do that often, but for sure, this time deserved it. Don't expect that to become a thing. I just had to do it right now. The Italian coming out of me. Um, so yeah, the bass is just, it's good in every context, whether it's playing, a bit more rhythmically with the bass. I mean, with the drum, or it's playing a lead line either by itself or with another instrument doing some counterpoint. It's just solid all the way around. Now, when we're talking about width, I said the bass was the second widest tone sound in this setup. Oh man. Okay, so the widest tone is a distorted guitar. It's crunchy, it's got a lot of width to it, it takes up a lot of space, and it's used in moments where they're going for a bigger sound because a lot of the lead tones here are narrow. You'll notice that if you go back and listen, and I need to do this too because I'm kind of not 100% certain on this, but we're going to roll with it because I'm like 70% certain this happened. This is what I heard. When they used what I'm going to say, the rhythm guitar tone, all right, it was distorted. It might have had a bit of overdrive to it. It was a very wide tone, and it was a lot less clean than the lead tones that the guitars were using or the bass tone. All right, it's the only instrument that really had a lot of crunch to it, other than when we had that weird '80s hair metal tone for that guitar solo during the dissonant section. We were really coloring outside the lines of that chord progression there. But so we have this really wide tone, and it's utilized heavily rhythmically heavy, usually in collaboration with the drums to create this really disjointed, almost djenty feel. But it was always for sections that needed to feel bigger, wider, louder. It wasn't used all the time. There were a lot of sections that felt sparser and more hollow, and I believe that the key ingredient there is that rhythm guitar tone. Um, like I said, it pops up quite a few times when they're looking for big sounds, but it is absent at the beginning and at the end, and at a couple of sections in the middle where they were aiming for sparse, thin, lean sections. Um, so that's actually something interesting. We're gonna get into genre and inspiration in a little bit, but I'm gonna touch on that right now. There's a lot of jazz in here that I hear. There's also a lot of classic and modern prog, kind of the experimentation in what you can play note wise from classic prog, but also a lot of time signature play from modern prog. And both of those also come from jazz and classical. So we just have a ton of inspiration here, but I'm going to say specifically that using the guitar tone for the tone itself and what it brings to the atmosphere rather than what it can do musically or melodically and add to that complexity, that's going to be a very rock or post rock kind of idea. And I just think it's really cool to see a lot of this, just all these concepts melding into a single jammy, highly progressive, highly complex, and experimental track. It's just kind of phenomenal to see all these different ideas coming together. So yeah, we've covered the bass, we covered the rhythm guitar, and let's check out those drums. Well, let's go to the guitars. The guitars were probably the most versatile instrument. They could play something a little bit more rhythmically oriented, not necessarily playing so much with notes as far as the spacing of between notes and how long the notes are held to help create some of these disjointed time feels. And that's something we're going to have to touch on because time was definitely a concept and not necessarily something you could feel in this song. But yeah, sometimes the guitars were used for their rhythmic components to add to some of the disjointed time feels, but other times they were leads, and we saw just them playing both roles here. So that's just really cool to hear a lot of the legato, strong harmonic elements, and then some of the more metal rhythmic components. And it wasn't just one guitar; both guitars were doing this. I don't know if it was some backing tracking, double tracking, whatever you want to call it. One guitarist doing two or three parts, or if there was actually two guitarists doing their thing. But it was just really cool to see the single instrument kind of covering both ranges and a little bit of everything in between. Strong melody lines versus heavy rhythmic element. Jazz to rock, stuff like that. And yeah, so that was really cool. The drummer, I got things to say about this drummer. The drummer was also doing a lot of heavy lifting here, but not in the way that I typically talk about a drummer doing work. Um, I think this week we had a drummer who was not only playing complex stuff, but making the time feel natural to the listener. I think that was this week. Maybe it was last weekend. I don't remember. And I don't remember the song or band or drummer, so I feel horrible for that. But this drummer was doing double duty, but not in that kind of way where they were being complex but simplifying. This drummer is being complex and complexifying. That's not a word, but I just made it up. Uh, yeah. So normally, in typical metal and rock, especially in more of the mainstream metal, especially more in the mainstream rock, even when we look to jazz, all right, the drummer is usually a human metronome. Well, let me rephrase that. It's usually adjacent to a human metronome. It kind of runs parallel to that. Your drummer is the heartbeat of a band. We can even see this in classical. You have your timpanis and instruments like that in your percussion section that are more contributing to the song. But then you have stuff like your snare and your bass drum, and those are going to be more about contributing to the heartbeat of the song to, give the audience a pulse to listen to. And not to undermine that type of playing at all. Heartbeats are important. For humans, without heartbeats, we're dead. We can kind of attribute that to music because without a strong heartbeat, the music's kind of difficult to follow, and you're going to have a lot of people falling off, which I think is something that this song kind of has an issue with, but it's not an issue. We'll get into that later. But yeah, so it's not bad to be a drummer who just kind of keeps the beat. All right, that's a very key part of being a drummer, of providing that heartbeat, and that heartbeat is a very strong component of songs, especially modern songs. Um, so we see that a lot in rock and metal drumming and jazz drumming and classical drumming, like I said, but we don't see it here like at all. There are a couple of sections where the drummer lays down a nice groove to kind of get into, but I don't think the drummer feels their job is necessarily to make sense of the time, which is something I've talked about. I've praised drummers in the past for making complex time feels or complex time signatures feel normal, to give the listener a groove to fall into despite the chaos in the rhythmic qualities of the rest of the band. That is not happening here. The drummer is playing complex stuff over complex time signatures, and they don't really seem to care if you can groove with it or not. That's not a bad thing. It's complex, it's experimental, it's definitely making music for music's sake. These are all things that I've praised in the past, but they do have their downsides, as all types of musical decisions do. And for this one, it makes the song really difficult to groove to. And a lot of people listen to music to kind of get into that groove, whether it's something more complex like Periphery or uh, Tesseract, where it's hyper complex and the drummer helps you get into that groove, or dance music like pop and electronica, where you have those very strong, 2 and 4 beats with a bass kick to let that's where the groove is. Um, so yeah, we have this kind of understanding. A lot of people, whether it's mainstream or even into harsher metal or more difficult musics to listen to, that we still like having something to groove to, a pattern or a rhythm to kind of move our body to, even if it's a little disjointed. We get something like 5/4 where it feels abrupt. We have that one extra beat, but you can also, 5 is weird, but 10 is even. And as long as you can make a 10 beat melody, the listener can kind of still fall into that groove, even though it's a bit of an irregular time signature. And like I said, we're not seeing that here at all. The drummer does not care. There was one section that felt like 11/8, 12/8 alternating. And there was always this weird hiccup that I was having difficulty, anticipating. And the drummer was not helping. He's like, okay, they're going to accent on this one. I'm going to accent on this one. There's not going to be any sort of cohesion in the time feel here. Um, and that's just another type of complexity and layering and phenomenal drum playing. I don't know how much of that is something that he set out to do. He said specifically, I'm writing this. I don't want anyone to get into a groove for these sections. Or if that's just how it came out, maybe that's what feels natural to him, and they just don't happen to be groovy sections, because there were a couple of parts where there was a groove, and they do kind of fall into, 4 block patterns, whether that was 4/4 or, yeah, I guess 4/4 is the go-to there. But there were a couple of sections that felt like they were in 4/4. And so it's not like the song was devoid of groove or of that pocket for the listener to sit in, but the drummer definitely did not make things easy in quite a few sections. And again, that's not a negative point, that's not a positive point, it's a fact. But yeah, so the drummer has these sections where he has this strong groove, but it's not in a groovy time. They're still typical drum patterns. They're just not in typical groove, like groove lengths. But there's also 1 or 2 sections where the drummer gets to show off his chops a little bit. And one of them specifically that stood out to me was the entire band cut out except for, I think it was the guitar and the drums. And they were both playing these crazy rhythmic patterns with lots of space between, the riffs, the patterns themselves. So you get like do 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 do, and you get like these pockets of sound in the silence. And first of all, I love that. A lot of music, especially when you get into rock and metal, it seems like they feel they're forced to fill every single second of time. And maybe it's because I come from jazz and classical, where I mean, classical, they both have string instruments, but there's also a lot of wind based instruments. And without a large amount of people or being very good at circulatory breathing, you're going to have pockets of space in the sounds. A guitar can keep a tone or a rhythm going forever, and metal and rock is very good at this. Just keep strumming. Whether it's rock from the '90s where we used a lot of pedal notes, Metallica is very popular for that, or we're looking at something like Between the Buried and Me, or uh, actually that might not be a good example, but something like Krallis, where it's just constant playing. They're always filling the space with sound. Um, that's just kind of the status quo for rock and metal. So it's really awesome for me, because I don't get to hear it very often, is silence. It's just something that I miss. That I mean, I say rock and metal, but everywhere almost every composer feels the need to fill space. I just feel like rock and metal, it's just part of its DNA is to fill space. But it is present in almost every genre. It's very unusual in in any music to have moments of silence, no instruments playing. So I really appreciate that on its own. But instead of choosing to do two guitars doing this, they chose a guitar and a drum, and they let the drum play his kit like an instrument, where each you know drum had its own tone and timbre to it, and he could make little runs like a guitar. So yeah, little bit of chance to show off that little the little bit of I guess you could say harmonic or melodic writing that you can do with the drum kit. Showing off a bit of that though. So yeah, the drummer got to show off a lot of his chops, and like I said, even though the sections that really kind of didn't work for me were the ones that were difficult to follow along with rhythmically, the fact that he can pull that off and kind of sit in the groove, sit in the pocket for other sections is phenomenal. I guess the last thing I want to talk about, holy cow, we're at a 30-minute video already. Last thing I want to talk about though is time. And this kind of goes a bit with the drums. This song is just not groovy for the most part. Like I said, there are a couple sections where they pull back to 4/4, or they use an unusual time signature, but they phrase their melodic line so that it feels like 4/4, or feels like something a little more natural, less disjointed. But then we get sections like that 11/8, 12/8, and I don't know, man. It's just so disjointed. Everybody's doing their own thing. Doesn't feel like anybody's matching up. When we finish out the 11/8, 12/8, when we start the next 11/8, I kind of expect everybody to be on the same page at beat one. We're starting, the pattern over again. And I didn't catch it. And it happens in quite a few sections. I didn't catch the time signature of some of the more complex stuff. But like I said, that happens quite a few times where it feels like everybody's kind of on their own page and there's a lot of chaos, but there's no strong DNA or drum or heartbeat or drum part to kind of keep the listener engaged. And again, that's not bad. It's an experimental type of writing, especially compared to what is popular right now. But that doesn't make it bad; it just makes it different. And it definitely makes it worth of discussion and analysis and dissection. So we'll get to that in a second. I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself in everything today. Like I just want to talk about every single aspect of this song at the same time. Um, but yeah, there's some sections that are just completely lacking groove. The interesting thing about the 11/8, because I was going to talk about unusual time signatures, and you can actually make sense of odd time signatures. 11/8 can be grouped into 3/3/3/2. So you get these strong beats. You get bop 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 bop, and it has a groove to it. You get these pockets of three, and then a shorter one. You get this little two beat, and then you get these three pockets. So it has a rhythm. It has a feel. 3/3/3/2 is the traditionally used feel for 11/8, and 11/8 is actually not that unusual. It's just not popularly used in a lot of modern mainstream music. Um, so even though it's unusual in the fact that not many people use it, there's actually a rhythm to it, a groove you can fall into. The problem is when you pair that with a 12/8, and now you've got 3/3/3/2, 3/3/3/3. So it makes the two so much further away, because then you got 3/3/3/2, 3/3/3/3/3/3/2, and you got 7/3s, and that pocket of threes is just long enough for your brain to forget the twos coming, unless you're just like really razor focused on that. And so it's not so much that it is an unusual time signature, but that they're alternating between two time signatures that make it feel a lot more disjointed than it should be, because we're getting that extra beat that we're not expecting. Um, so yeah, They do that often though. From what I could tell, I couldn't really nail down a time signature in a lot of the more chaotic sections, and I think it's because they're using alternating. And maybe it's not even alternating back and forth like the 11/8, 12/8, 11/8, 12/8. They could have been using 3. Not any specific example, but just pulling it out, something like 4/4, or like let's say like 4/4, 5/4, 7/4, 5/4. So yeah, you get something really weird like that, and it can feel extremely disjointed, especially once you get to the 7/4, because it's over twice as long as that three. Yeah, it's almost twice as long as that 4/4 that you start on. So it makes things feel really disjointed, and the more times that you switch time signatures, the more disjointed it can feel. So I'm not sure what was going on in a lot of the more chaotic parts, but I would almost guarantee we're not looking at a single time signature, but swapping them. And you can change this up. It doesn't have to be every other bar. You can run 4/4 for 2 bars and then 5/4 for 1 bar. And now you have this weird 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 over 8 over 3 bars, 13 beats over 3 bars, and it's just like, this is where a lot of that complexity can come in with the time, even though the time signatures themselves aren't unusual or strange. The collaboration of multiple across bars can really make things feel disjointed. So I guess that's about everything I wanted to talk about there. Beautiful bass. I love how the bass juxtaposed the guitar parts. I like their use of, really paying attention to sound width and realizing what sections need a wider sound and creating a wider sound for those sections, which was the rhythm guitar tone. The drum work was just phenomenal, and the wild time signatures. I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover. The only thing I will end this on is that I understand why this song does not have a lot of views and subscribers and all that. It is a wild song, but like I said, it's sort of experimental. I love experimental stuff, and I definitely think it's worthy of the band title Gordian Knot. It is a puzzle that is going to take a lot of work to crack or solve, however you want to view analysis. And yeah, I will probably be listening to, if not this song, then maybe some other stuff from them, just to kind of see what else they do, but also because I do want to dig into this a bit more and just kind of see if there's any secrets that I missed from my first listen. All right, so that's my thoughts that I'm giving you. This is your chance to give me your thoughts to me. Hit me up in the comments with what you thought of Gordian Knot, Some Brighter Things, and if you have a link to the sheet music, please, you got to get that. You got to get that link to me. All right, I've said before, despite being a musician and in really loving and understanding audio and music, I guess more music than audio, I'm a visual learning, which is just like, God, it feels like a backhanded compliment. You're going to enjoy music, and your DNA is going to make understanding music audibly horrible. So I definitely learn and understand things better visually. So if you can give me some sheet music, that's going to help me in my quest to unlock what is going on here. So yeah, if anybody has a link for some sheet music, hit me up. When you're done commenting, if you'd like, you can check the description box above that. There's some links in there if you're interested about anything adjacent to the channel, such as blocked videos or the Patreon. It's only $1 a month, and you get access to the Discord community, as well as voting on future bands and themes. If any of that sounds interesting to you, go ahead and pop over there. Like I said, it's only $1 a month, and you get all of those benefits. That one wraps up this week of side projects. And it was quite a variety of stuff, even though some of it was kind of in that, that jazzy, hyper-technical pocket, which is interesting that kind of popped up a couple of times. But we had a bit of variety. And if you're interested in more variety, next week is unusual genre mashups. So that's going to be very interesting. Definitely, if you're not subscribed, check back on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and we're going to be looking at some weird stuff, I think. All right, and then of course we have special selections tomorrow and Sunday. All of this Every new video, as always, comes out at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC. And until you choose to come back and check me out, you guys stay safe out there. Keep being awesome and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.